I never imagined that the people I had raised with love would one day see me as an obstacle, a burden to be removed. Yet here I was, sitting in my sunlit kitchen, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee filling the air, pretending everything was normal while a small, nagging unease had settled in my chest. The waves outside lapped gently against the shore, a sound that had always comforted me. My beach house had been my sanctuary for decades, a place where I had laughed, cried, and grown alongside my son, David. The walls were lined with memories, framed photographs of birthdays, holidays, and quiet afternoons of reading together. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of salty wind through the open windows held a piece of my life. For years, my days had followed a rhythm I had come to cherish. Mornings began with coffee and the newspaper, followed by tending to the small garden out back. I liked to watch the birds flutter between the flowers, their chirping a reminder that life, despite its difficulties, was always moving forward. Afternoons were often spent painting, the delicate strokes of watercolors allowing me to release the emotions I didn't always share aloud. Evenings I reserved for quiet reflection. I had learned in my 56 years that peace was not merely found in the absence of trouble, but in the acceptance of life as it came. David had always been my pride and joy. From the day he was born, I had poured my heart into raising him. There had been struggles, of course, the inevitable disagreements between parent and child, the small frustrations of daily life, but nothing that could have prepared me for what was coming. The truth was, I had always assumed that love was unconditional, that family meant a shared understanding and unwavering support. I was wrong. It started innocuously enough. A phone call that morning, the kind that should have been ordinary, carried a weight I could not have anticipated. "Mom?" David's voice was cheerful, almost rehearsed. "Yes, David. How are you?" I asked, smiling, though a small chill ran down my spine. "We're going tomorrow, Mom," he said. "I've sold your house and car." I froze. The coffee cup slipped from my hands, clattering against the countertop. My heart raced, confusion swirling in my mind. "Sold my house? My car? But why? Who? Why would you?" David interrupted almost impatiently. "Don't worry, Mom. It's all being handled." "You'll be fine." "Handled?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "David, this is my home. My life is in that house." He laughed lightly, a sound meant to soothe, but all it did was deepen the pit in my stomach. "Mom, don't stress. It's just a house. You'll be better off. Trust me." I did not trust him. Every word he spoke felt foreign, as if I were listening to a stranger. I remembered the afternoons spent teaching him how to bake, how to ride a bike, how to treat people with kindness and integrity. And now those lessons seemed to vanish into a cloud of greed and deception. My own son, the child I had nurtured with love, had blindsided me in a single casual sentence. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the polished wood, trying to summon clarity. The walls around me, once a sanctuary, felt suddenly oppressive, unfamiliar. I thought of the countless nights I had spent alone in this house, reading, writing, dreaming. How had it come to this? How had my sanctuary been turned into a battlefield before I even realized a war had begun? I called my friend Eleanor, hoping for guidance. "Eleanor," I said, my voice barely a whisper, "I don't know what to do." "David, he sold the house, the car, without even asking me." Eleanor's response was immediate, warm, and grounding. "Renati, breathe. Let's take a step back. You're not alone. We'll figure this out together." Her words reminded me of a truth I had known all my life, but had forgotten in the shock. Strength comes not from isolation, but from connection. Even in moments of betrayal, there is hope. Hope that clarity and courage can be found. The next day, I walked through the garden, letting the sun kiss my face, hoping the familiar sights and sounds would anchor me. I examined the roses, their petals delicate yet resilient, blooming despite the unpredictable weather. Perhaps there was a lesson in their persistence. Life, like these roses, continues, even when it hurts, even when it betrays you. Later, I sat in the living room, flipping through old photographs. Each smile in those pictures carried a memory. David's first steps, his high school graduation, family vacations filled with laughter. I realized that while those memories were precious, they could not shield me from the reality of his actions. I had been blindsided, yes, but I was not defeated. Not yet. The afternoon sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the floor. I could hear the distant chatter of neighbors walking their dogs, children laughing as they rode bicycles past the beach. The world continued, indifferent to my personal calamity, and yet that very indifference was a reminder. My life did not end because of their betrayal. I was still here. I still had my mind, my body, my dignity, and crucially, my choices. Choices. The word felt heavy in my hands. What would I do now? Could I confront David? Could I reclaim what was mine, not merely in a material sense, but in spirit? My chest tightened at the thought, but beneath the fear was a spark, faint, but undeniable, of courage. I remembered something my mother once told me when I was a girl. Renati, even when people turn against you, never forget who you are. Your worth is not determined by their actions, but by the love and strength you carry inside. I closed my eyes, letting the memory wash over me. It was time to stop seeing myself as a victim. It was time to awaken the resilience that had carried me through so many other storms. As night fell, I stood on the balcony, the ocean stretching endlessly before me. The horizon was painted with streaks of pink and orange, a reminder that even after the darkest hours, beauty could emerge. I promised myself that I would not be defeated by betrayal. I would find a way to reclaim my life, my dignity, my freedom, and my peace. And in that quiet moment, listening to the rhythmic crashing of waves, I made a vow. No matter what it took, I would face this challenge with courage. I would fight not out of anger, but out of love. For myself, for the life I had built, and for the dignity that no one could take from me without my consent. Tomorrow, the battle would begin. But tonight, I allowed myself a single moment of calm, a deep breath of the salty sea air, and the quiet understanding that I was stronger than I had ever known. The next morning I woke with a heaviness that pressed on my chest. The sunlight streamed through the curtains, but it felt too bright, too harsh, a reminder that the world would not pause for my grief. I made coffee, but the aroma, usually so comforting, did little to soothe me. My hands trembled slightly as I poured it into my favorite mug, the one with the faded floral pattern that David had given me years ago. I tried to sip, tried to anchor myself in routine, but my mind kept returning to the words he had said. "We're going tomorrow. Mom, I've sold your house and car." I couldn't shake the feeling that everything I had built, my home, my sanctuary, the memories etched into every corner, was slipping through my fingers. The thought was suffocating, and I realized, for the first time in decades, that I felt truly powerless. I had raised him, guided him, given him the foundation to thrive, and now he had betrayed me in the most intimate way imaginable. I needed clarity, someone to help me see through the fog of shock and hurt. I dialed Eleanor's number again. Her voice, steady and warm, grounded me immediately. "Renati," she said, "tell me exactly what happened." I recounted every word, every detail, trying not to break into sobs, though my voice quavered. Eleanor listened without interruption, her silence filled with understanding rather than judgment. "Renati," she said finally, "this is more than just a miscommunication. David has crossed a line that no child should ever cross. You need to protect yourself." Her words, though harsh, carried truth. It was not enough to grieve quietly behind closed doors. Something had to be done. I realized I needed legal advice, a plan, and most importantly, I needed to confront my own feelings of betrayal without letting them consume me. I spent the afternoon going through my files, gathering deeds, car papers, and financial documents. My hands shook as I sorted through them, but each signature, each piece of evidence reminded me that I had rights. This was not just about property. It was about my autonomy, my dignity, and my ability to make choices about my own life. I also thought about David's words, the casual way he had said it, as if selling my house and car was an ordinary task, like grocery shopping or mowing the lawn. That casual cruelty cut deeper than any shouted argument ever could. I had spent decades teaching him respect, empathy, and honesty. Now, I wondered if those lessons had ever taken root at all. In the evening, I received a message from my daughter-in-law, Marissa. "Mom, don't worry about the house and car. We'll make everything easier for you." I stared at the screen, feeling the icy grip of realization. Easier? I whispered to myself. How could I possibly see this as easier? My home was my life, my memories, my independence. They had packaged betrayal with polite words, a thin veil over their greed. That night, I sat on the balcony again, the ocean stretching into the dark horizon. The rhythmic crashing of waves that had comforted me before now mirrored my racing heart. I felt anger bubbling beneath the surface, mingling with sorrow. But I also felt something else, a flicker of determination. This would not define me. I would not allow myself to be reduced to a victim in my own home, in my own life. Sleep came fitfully, interrupted by dreams of empty rooms, locked doors, and faces I had loved turning away from me. When morning arrived, I forced myself out of bed, telling myself I needed to act. I called a lawyer I had known for years, a kind man named Mr. Fisher. He had helped me with minor matters before, but I needed more now. "Renedy," he said, after listening to my story, "this is serious. But you have rights. You are the legal owner of your property, and no one can take that from you without your consent. We will stop this, and more importantly, we will make sure you're protected." Hearing his voice, calm but firm, was like a lifeline. I realized that although my son and daughter-in-law had betrayed me, I was not powerless. I had allies, I had the law, and I had myself, my mind, my heart, and my resolve. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Phone calls, emails, and meetings filled my schedule. I contacted real estate agents, confirming that no official documents had been signed without my knowledge. I visited the bank to verify my accounts. Each step, though small, was a reclamation of control. I began to feel a sense of agency returning, a reminder that although betrayal had knocked me down, it could not keep me there. Through it all, I reflected on my relationship with David and Marissa. I realized that love alone could not protect me from manipulation. Generosity without boundaries, trust without verification, and loyalty without discernment could all be exploited. It pained me to admit, but these were lessons I had to internalize to survive this ordeal. Eleanor visited one afternoon, bringing with her a basket of food and a calm presence. "Renedy," she said, sitting beside me on the sofa, "I know this hurts more than words can say. But remember, anger is temporary. Courage, patience, and clarity will see you through." Her words reminded me of the internal battle I was facing. It was not just about David and Marissa. It was about my own fears, my own doubts, and the part of me that had hesitated to fight back, believing that family could never truly harm you. I realized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. That evening, I wrote in my journal, my hands trembling with a mix of grief and resolve. Today I learned that betrayal can come from the most unexpected places, but I will not let this define me. My home, my life, my memories, they are mine, and I will protect them. I will not allow love to be used as a weapon against me. I am ready to face what comes next. The sun had dipped below the horizon when I closed my journal. The sky was painted with shades of crimson and gold, a reminder that even after the darkest days, beauty could still emerge. I felt a small measure of peace, a momentary calm before the storm. I knew the next steps would be difficult. There would be confrontation, perhaps even heartbreak. But for the first time in days, I felt prepared. I was no longer merely a mother caught in the betrayal of her child. I was a woman awakening to her own strength, reclaiming her dignity, and preparing to fight for the life she had built. The battle was coming, and I would meet it head on. As I turned off the lights and went to bed, I whispered to myself, "You are stronger than you know. You will rise above this." And for the first time in weeks, I believed it. The day I decided to confront David and Marissa felt heavier than any morning I had experienced in years. I had spent the previous nights tossing and turning, going over every possible scenario in my mind. I rehearsed the words I would say, imagining both anger and calm. I wasn't naive. I knew this confrontation could bring tears, shouts, and perhaps more betrayal. But I also knew that silence would make me complicit in losing everything I had built for myself. Eleanor insisted on coming with me. She arrived early, bringing coffee and a quiet strength that I desperately needed. "Renati," she said softly, "remember, this isn't just about the house or the car. This is about your voice, your rights, and your peace of mind. Stand firm." Her words were a balm, steadying my nerves as I prepared to face the people I had once trusted with my entire heart. We arrived at David's apartment in mid-morning. The building smelled faintly of polished wood and disinfectant. I felt my stomach twist with anxiety, but also with determination. This was my home, my life, not theirs to control. Eleanor squeezed my hand, and together we rang the doorbell. Marissa answered first, her face a forced mask of politeness. "Mom," she said with a tone that sounded practiced. "We were just about to take care of some things." "Take care of?" I echoed, my voice stronger than I expected. "Do you mean selling my house and my car without telling me?" Her eyes flickered, a brief crack in the mask. "We thought it would be easier for you." "Easier?" I asked, my voice rising slightly. "Easier for whom, Marissa?" "Certainly not for me. My home, my belongings, my memories, these are not yours to decide upon." David appeared behind her, his posture stiff. "Mom, we're just trying to help," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. I noticed the hesitation in his eyes, a subtle unease that had not been there before. "Help?" I repeated, taking a small step closer. "Help is guiding me when I ask for it, not making decisions for me behind my back. Help is respect. What you've done is betrayal, plain and simple." Marissa opened her mouth to reply, but I held up a hand. "No, you don't get to explain away deceit with soft words. You sold my house and car. You never consulted me. You never asked if this is what I wanted. That is not help. That is taking." David looked down, and for a moment, the weight of my words seemed to settle on him. But then he attempted to justify his actions. "Mom, we're adults. We thought you'd be happier if things were simplified." I shook my head, frustration and sorrow mingling into a bitter taste in my mouth. "You never thought to ask me. You never considered my feelings, my autonomy, my life. You assumed control because it suited you. That is not adult behavior. That is selfishness masquerading as concern." Marissa's lips pressed into a thin line, and she glanced at David. "Mom, please, we were just trying to make things smoother. It's not worth all this anger." "Not worth all this anger?" I echoed, my voice trembling with a mix of grief and resolve. "Do you realize what anger feels like when it's born from betrayal? It's not just anger, it's heartbreak. It's disbelief. It's the realization that someone you loved and nurtured sees you as disposable." For a moment, silence fell. I could feel the tension in the air, thick and almost suffocating. Eleanor's hand rested on my back, a grounding presence, reminding me that I was not alone. "I want you both to understand something," I continued, my voice steadier now. "This isn't just about a house or a car. This is about respect, trust, and the love that should exist between family. You have tested that love and found it lacking, and I will not allow your selfishness to rob me of my dignity or my independence." David finally spoke, his voice quieter, almost remorseful. "Mom, I didn't realize how much this would hurt you." I studied his face, searching for sincerity. I saw a flicker of it, but it was buried beneath years of entitlement and habit. "Realize it now," I said, "because from this moment forward, nothing about my life will be decided without me. If you cannot honor that, then perhaps you need to reconsider your role in my life." The room fell silent again. Marissa's eyes glistened, whether from guilt or anger I could not tell. I knew they were used to having me acquiesce, to bend to their wishes without question. But that woman, the one who had bent for them, trusted them, and nurtured them, was gone. I had reclaimed her, even in small, trembling increments. After what felt like hours, I left their apartment with Eleanor by my side. The elevator ride down was quiet, punctuated only by the hum of machinery and the soft shuffle of our feet. Outside, the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the street. I breathed in deeply, letting the warmth touch my face, a small reminder that life continued beyond the pain of betrayal. That felt necessary, I said to Eleanor, my voice soft, yet filled with newfound clarity. Even if they never understand, even if they never apologize, I needed to say it. I needed to mark the boundary they crossed. Eleanor smiled, her eyes reflecting pride and empathy. Renati, you were strong. You spoke your truth, and that is the first step in taking back your life. Returning home, I sat in my living room, the familiar surroundings feeling different now. The betrayal still lingered, sharp and raw, but I could also feel a shift within me, a subtle yet undeniable surge of strength. I realized that confrontation was not just about demanding acknowledgement from David and Marissa. It was about reclaiming my own voice, validating my own feelings, and asserting my right to live life on my terms. I spent the rest of the day making a plan. Legal consultations, property evaluations, and financial checks, each action was a step toward protection and empowerment. I also reached out to friends I trusted, sharing the story with them, seeking advice, and accepting their support. Their kindness and unwavering belief in me were like a lighthouse in a storm, guiding me toward clarity and resolve. That night, I sat on my balcony again, the wind brushing against my face, the horizon painted with shades of purple and gold. I realized that life had changed irrevocably, but I also understood that change was not inherently bad. Sometimes, it was in the crucible of betrayal and heartbreak that we discovered our true strength. I whispered into the night, a promise to myself, I will protect what is mine, and I will live with dignity, regardless of what they choose. I will rise above this. The confrontation had ended, but the journey was far from over. Legal battles awaited, conversations with David and Marissa would continue, and emotional scars would need tending. But for the first time in weeks, I felt a spark, a quiet, resilient fire of determination that told me I could face whatever came next. And as I closed my eyes that night, I clung to one thought, the mantra that would guide me forward. I am not powerless. I am my own guardian, my own advocate, and my own family now. The morning after the confrontation, I felt both exhausted and oddly invigorated. Exhausted because facing David and Marissa had opened wounds I didn't realize were still so raw, and invigorated because I had finally spoken my truth. But I knew words alone would not be enough. If I wanted to reclaim control, I had to prepare, not just emotionally, but legally. Eleanor arrived early, as she always did, carrying a thick folder of documents I had painstakingly compiled over the past weeks. Bills, letters, property papers, bank statements. Everything that proved my ownership, my decisions, and my independence. Renati, she said softly, we'll need to organize all of this so the lawyer can see your case clearly. They can't twist facts if the facts are right here. I nodded, the weight of responsibility settling heavily on my shoulders. I wasn't used to this, defending myself against the very people I had nurtured and trusted. But as I spread the papers across the dining table, I realized something. This was not just about protection. This was about empowerment. Every document, every receipt, every note I had kept was a testament to my life, my choices, and my dignity. Later that afternoon, I met with Mr. Weber, the lawyer Eleanor had recommended. He was a tall man with a calm demeanor and eyes that radiated both intelligence and empathy. Mrs. Richter, he said, shaking my hand firmly, you are facing a difficult situation, but you are far from powerless. The key here is to show clear evidence of your autonomy and decision-making. We'll prepare for every possible argument David and Marissa might present. I felt a mix of relief and anxiety. Relief because Mr. Weber seemed capable and understanding. Anxiety because I knew the battle would be emotionally draining. Do you really think we can win? I asked quietly, my hands clutching my handbag. He smiled reassuringly. We are not going into this blindly. You have documents, witnesses, and your own clarity of mind. That is more than most people have. If we approach this methodically, yes, we can win. But it will require courage from you. Courage. I had felt it flicker in me during the confrontation, but now I understood it would need to burn steadily, like a flame that could not be extinguished. I nodded, committing silently to myself, I will not let fear decide my fate. Over the next few days, I prepared tirelessly. I met with accountants to clarify financial statements, revisited my journals to document emotional manipulation, and spoke to neighbors who had witnessed Marissa's disrespectful behavior. Each meeting, each phone call, reinforced a truth I had known all along. my life, my property, and my dignity were mine alone. Eleanor and I also met with a therapist, not because we doubted my sanity, but to ensure that any claims of emotional instability could be addressed professionally. Dr. Moore, a woman with kind eyes and a steady voice, reassured me. Mrs. Richter, your mental faculties are intact. You are aware, reflective, and capable of making sound decisions. This is not just my opinion. It's backed by standardized evaluations. You are more than prepared to advocate for yourself. Her words were a balm to my spirit. For years, I had worried about being dismissed, being called irrational or forgetful. Now, I had professional confirmation of my competence, and that gave me strength I had not felt in decades. Then came the moment of strategic planning with Mr. Weber. We discussed every possible tactic David and Marissa might use. They could claim emotional instability, confusion over financial matters, or influence from friends like Eleanor. But for every argument, we had evidence, bank records, property deeds, witness statements, and professional evaluations. The scale had begun to tip in my favor. One evening, after a long day of preparation, I sat alone in my living room. The house was quiet, but my mind was alive with anticipation and worry. I traced my fingers over the armrest of my favorite chair and whispered to myself, I am ready. I have done everything I can to protect myself. Now we wait, and I will not falter. Eleanor joined me with tea, her presence comforting. Renati, I know this feels overwhelming, but remember, you are not just fighting for property. You're fighting for respect, for your dignity, for your life as you choose to live it. I nodded, letting her words sink in. She was right. This was bigger than a house or a car. This was about self-respect, autonomy, and reclaiming a sense of security I had taken for granted. For the first time, I truly understood the depth of betrayal I had suffered, and the magnitude of the courage I would need to rise above it. The days rolled by in a blur of paperwork, consultations, and inner reflection. I found moments of quiet solace by tending to my small garden, reading letters from friends who encouraged me, and journaling my thoughts. Each activity grounded me, reminding me that while the legal battle was looming, my life existed beyond the courtroom. One afternoon, as I reviewed financial documents with Mr. Weber, I realized something profound. For years, I had allowed others to dictate my decisions, sometimes subtly, sometimes overtly. But now the tables had turned. I was no longer a passive observer in my own life. I was the architect of my future, the protector of my home, and the guardian of my peace. When the day of the first legal hearing arrived, I woke early, a mix of nerves and determination coursing through me. I chose my clothes carefully, a modest professional outfit that conveyed dignity and seriousness. I wanted the world to see the woman who had endured betrayal, yet refused to be broken. As I stood in front of the courthouse, Eleanor beside me, I took a deep breath. The sun shone on the stone steps, and I felt a strange calm settle over me. This was the culmination of weeks of preparation, reflection, and courage. What awaited me inside those walls could not shake the strength I had built within. I whispered to myself again, as I had countless times during this ordeal, I am ready. I am capable. I will not let betrayal define me. And with that, I stepped forward, knowing that whatever happened in the courtroom, I had already reclaimed something far more valuable than property, my voice, my dignity, and my right to live life on my own terms. The morning of the court hearing arrived faster than I had expected. I woke before dawn, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear, determination, and a strange sense of anticipation. Today was the day I would face David and Marissa not as a mother, but as a woman defending her life, her home, and her dignity. Eleanor drove me to the courthouse, holding my hand tightly throughout the ride. Remember, Renati, she whispered, stay calm, speak your truth, and trust the evidence we've prepared. You are stronger than you think. I nodded, feeling a lump form in my throat, but also a spark of courage igniting inside me. The courthouse was imposing, with tall wooden doors and echoing hallways that seemed to amplify every footstep. I took a deep breath as we entered, adjusting my coat and reminding myself this was not about intimidation or fear. This was about justice, clarity, and truth. When we reached the courtroom, David and Marissa were already there, sitting with their lawyer. David's eyes flicked toward me briefly, then quickly looked away. Marissa, however, met my gaze head-on, her expression a careful mix of indignation and anger, as though she could wield her disdain like a weapon. I felt a pang of sadness, not for her, but for the years of trust and love I had invested in a relationship now strained and broken. Mr. Weber, standing beside me, gave a reassuring nod. "Let's begin," he said softly. And so it started. The opening statements were formal, yet filled with veiled accusations. Marissa's lawyer painted me as unstable, irrational, and incapable of managing my own affairs. He spoke of my sudden decisions to sell my car and make changes in my financial accounts as if they were proof of incompetence. Every word felt like a sharp knife, but I reminded myself that words alone were not enough to define me. Then came the witnesses. First was Marissa, called to the stand by her lawyer. She spoke with practiced emotion, describing moments when she claimed I had been forgetful, confused, or easily influenced. Every sentence dripped with the implication that my actions were questionable. Yet, as I watched her, I noticed inconsistencies in her story, details that didn't add up, moments where her eyes darted nervously, as if she feared being caught in a lie. Mr. Weber's cross-examination was precise and methodical. "Marissa," he asked calmly, "can you give the court a specific instance where my client's decision harmed you or anyone else?" Marissa faltered, her carefully rehearsed words unraveling under scrutiny. He continued, "How often did you speak to her without requesting money or favors?" The silence that followed spoke volumes. I felt a flicker of satisfaction. Truth was beginning to pierce the veil of deceit. Next came David. Seeing my son on the stand, prepared to misrepresent my character, was more painful than I could have anticipated. Yet I knew I could not let emotion control me. I had to stay focused on the facts, on my story, on my truth. Mr. Weber asked pointed questions about financial assistance I had provided over the years, about visits and requests, about instances where privacy had been breached. Each question exposed the gap between perception and reality. Each answer revealed the facade of concern that had masked greed and entitlement. Then it was my turn to present evidence. Bank statements, receipts, letters, and professional evaluations were laid before the court. Dr. Moore testified to my mental clarity and competence, describing the cognitive tests I had undergone and confirming that I was fully capable of managing my own affairs. Neighbors and friends shared their observations of my daily life, the routines, the independence, the decisiveness, and painted a picture of a woman fully in control of her life. Finally, I was called to the stand. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of every year, every lesson, every betrayal, and every triumph behind me. I spoke slowly, clearly, and from the heart. I recounted the timeline of events, the decisions I had made, the respect I had always expected and given, and the moments when I realized that my kindness had been mistaken for weakness. "Your Honor," I said, my voice steady despite the emotion swirling inside me, "I am here today not because I am incapable, but because I am capable. I have lived my life with integrity, love, and fairness. The decisions I have made regarding my property, my finances, and my independence are mine alone. I am not asking for your sympathy. I am asking for your recognition of the truth." David and Marissa's lawyer tried to interject, attempting to frame my newfound independence as the result of manipulation by friends and advisors, but I responded calmly, explaining that my decisions were informed, rational, and reflective of my life experience. Eleanor and my other supporters nodded in silent solidarity, a visible testament to the genuine relationships I had cultivated, based on respect, trust, and mutual care. As the trial wore on, the courtroom atmosphere shifted. The confidence I felt within me seemed to radiate outward. Witness by witness, document by document, the story of my life, my integrity, and my competence emerged. I realized that the strength I had discovered in preparation was not just about winning this battle. It was about reclaiming my voice, my dignity, and my right to live without fear. By the afternoon, the judge called for closing arguments. Marissa's lawyer repeated his claims of manipulation and instability, but his words lacked the force they once carried. Mr. Weber, however, spoke with quiet power, methodically dismantling each accusation and highlighting the evidence of my autonomy and rational decision-making. When he finished, I felt a profound sense of relief. The truth had been laid bare, and for the first time in months, I believed that justice could prevail. As the judge retired to deliberate, I sat in my seat, hands folded, heart racing. Eleanor squeezed my hand gently, her eyes full of encouragement. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. The quiet mornings of contemplation, the painstaking preparation, the moments of doubt and fear, and the small victories that had built my courage. I understood now that this battle was not just for my property. It was for my life, my dignity, and my sense of self. When the judge finally returned, the room seemed to hold its collective breath. I straightened in my chair, feeling every ounce of tension in my body. The words that followed would determine not only the outcome of the case, but also the validation of years of experience, wisdom, and resilience. After careful review of the evidence and testimonies presented, the judge began. It is clear to this court that Mrs. Renedy Richter is fully competent to manage her affairs. The claims brought forth by her son and daughter-in-law are unsubstantiated and appear to be motivated by financial interest rather than genuine concern for her well-being. I felt my chest expand with relief and pride. The court had acknowledged not just my rights, but my autonomy, my strength, and my dignity. I was not powerless. I was not a victim. I was a woman reclaiming her life. As we left the courtroom, the sunlight felt warmer, the world brighter. Eleanor hugged me tightly, whispering, "You did it, Renedy. You stood tall, spoke your truth, and the world saw it." I nodded, tears streaming down my face, a mix of joy, relief, and empowerment washing over me. For the first time in months, I truly felt free. Free from manipulation, free from fear, and free to live life on my own terms. The days after the court verdict felt surreal. I woke up one morning in my familiar bedroom, sunlight streaming through the curtains, birds chirping outside, and yet the world felt new, like it was gently reminding me of possibilities I had long forgotten. The victory in court was not just a legal win, it was the beginning of something far greater, the chance to live fully for myself, without fear or manipulation. Eleanor visited that morning, her eyes sparkling with quiet excitement. "Renedy," she said, "I think it's time we start thinking about what you want, not what anyone else expects of you." I smiled, feeling a flutter of nervous anticipation. For so long, my life had been dictated by obligation, guilt, and the silent pressure of family expectations. Now the rules had changed. I was the author of my own story. I began by taking small steps. I walked through the neighborhood with no destination in mind, noticing details I had once overlooked, the laughter of children playing outside, the scent of freshly baked bread from the corner bakery, the gentle sway of the trees in the afternoon breeze. Each moment was a reminder that life, in its simplest forms, was still beautiful. But the emotional work was more challenging. The betrayal from David and Marissa had left deep scars. I found myself thinking, how could those I loved most see me only as a source of money? The grief surfaced in unexpected moments. When I made coffee in the morning, when I opened old letters, when I passed the mirror and saw the reflection of a woman who had been both hurt and strong. Some nights I cried, not out of despair, but as a release, letting years of suppressed frustration, sorrow, and disappointment wash away. Eleanor suggested I reach out to support groups for women who had experienced emotional and financial manipulation. At first I hesitated. Sharing my story with strangers felt intimidating, almost humiliating. But when I walked into the room filled with women who understood my pain, I felt a strange sense of relief. Their nods, their empathetic glances, and their willingness to share their own journeys created a space where vulnerability became strength. I listened, I shared, and slowly, the heavy weight of isolation began to lift. One afternoon, I returned to my now empty beach house. The walls, once filled with memories, seemed almost to breathe with silence. David and Marissa had taken what they wanted, yet the emptiness felt liberating rather than mournful. I walked through the rooms, touching the familiar furniture, recalling the laughter and warmth that had once filled these spaces. Then I made a decision. I would sell the property. Not out of bitterness, but as an act of closure, a symbolic gesture of moving forward, untethered by the past. With Eleanor's help, we found a small but beautiful apartment in the city center. Light poured in through wide windows, reflecting off the polished floors, and the walls were waiting for my personal touch. I decorated it slowly, filling it with mementos that spoke of freedom, growth, and individuality. A cozy reading nook, a small balcony with potted plants, photographs of friends who had supported me through the trial. All these pieces created a space that was undeniably mine. Financial independence, once taken for granted, now felt like a reclaimed treasure. I began to review my accounts, reorganize my investments, and plan for the future. The fear of being manipulated or coerced had disappeared, replaced with confidence and careful consideration. I had learned the hard way how to protect what was mine while still living with an open heart. Friendships, too, flourished. Eleanor and the other women from the support group became more than allies. They became family. We shared meals, attended art classes, and spent quiet afternoons talking about life, love, and dreams deferred. Through their company, I rediscovered laughter, spontaneity, and the joy of being understood without judgment. It was a balm for the soul, a reminder that the world was still filled with kindness, even if some corners had once been dark. I also started volunteering at an organization that helped elderly women navigate financial abuse. Sitting with these women, listening to their stories, and offering guidance and empathy reminded me why my fight in court mattered. Every tale of deception, every sigh of relief when understanding was shared, reinforced the importance of using my experience for a greater purpose. Through service, I discovered purpose and renewed meaning, and a profound sense of fulfillment began to grow within me. Yet, amidst all this healing, there were quiet moments of reflection about David and Marissa. I thought about the life they had chosen, the lessons they still had to learn, and the realization that some relationships could not be salvaged. I forgave them, not for their sake, but for mine. Forgiveness allowed me to release the last traces of bitterness, to let go of the emotional chains that had bound me, and to walk forward without the weight of resentment. Travel became another avenue of freedom. With the money I had wisely preserved and managed, I planned trips to places I had always dreamed of visiting. I walked through the streets of Paris, breathed in the lavender fields of Provence, and stood in awe of the ancient ruins in Italy. Each journey reminded me that life, no matter the past, held beauty, adventure, and unexpected joy. And with every return home, my apartment felt even more like a sanctuary, proof that I was capable of creating a life filled with love, peace, and independence. Evenings became moments of reflection. I would sit on my balcony sipping tea, watching the city lights flicker below, and feel gratitude. Gratitude for the fight I had faced, for the courage I had found, for the women who stood beside me, and for the realization that life was mine to live. The pain of betrayal remained, but it no longer defined me. I had transformed it into wisdom, resilience, and empowerment. One quiet night, as I gazed at the stars, I whispered to myself, I am free. I am whole. I am enough. And I truly believed it. For the first time in decades, I felt the profound truth of self-love, that my worth was never contingent on anyone's approval, that my happiness could not be dictated by the choices of others, and that freedom was both a right and a treasure to be cherished. The journey of reclaiming my life was not about material possessions or social standing. It was about rediscovering myself, embracing my independence, and honoring the lessons of the past. Every challenge, every tear, every sleepless night had shaped me into the woman I was now, courageous, wise, and ready to embrace whatever the future held. As I prepared for bed, I glanced around my apartment, each item a testament to my choices, my journey, and my growth. I felt a sense of pride I had never allowed myself to feel before. This was my life, my story, my victory, and I knew, deep in my heart, that nothing could ever take it away again. Morning sunlight poured through the wide windows of my new apartment, painting the walls gold. I stretched slowly, feeling the cool sheets against my skin, and for the first time in years I felt a lightness in my chest, a sensation I hadn't realized I'd been missing. The house, the memories, the betrayals, they all belonged to the past. Today, everything felt fresh, like a blank page waiting for my story. I poured myself a cup of tea and stepped out onto the balcony. Below, the city hummed with life, unaware of the battles I had fought and won. Yet in this quiet moment I realized that my victory wasn't just legal. It was deeply personal. I had reclaimed my life, my dignity, and my right to make decisions without fear. Each breath felt sweeter. Each glance around my new home filled with possibilities I had never allowed myself to imagine. Eleanor arrived mid-morning, carrying a basket of fresh pastries and flowers. "I've signed us up for the watercolor class this afternoon," she said cheerfully. "It's time you did something just for you." I smiled, a little nervously, realizing that I hadn't done something purely for my own joy in decades. The idea of rediscovering passions, of exploring creativity, thrilled me more than I expected. The class was small and intimate, filled with gentle, encouraging women who shared smiles and quiet conversation. As I dipped the brush into vibrant colors, I felt a rush of emotion, joy, excitement, even nervous anticipation. The first stroke across the paper was clumsy, imperfect, but it was mine. And with each brushstroke after that, I could feel the layers of fear and doubt peeling away, leaving behind a woman ready to embrace life with curiosity and courage. After class, we walked through the nearby park. The cherry blossoms were in full bloom, their delicate petals drifting lazily in the breeze. Children laughed as they chased one another, and couples strolled hand in hand. I felt an unfamiliar pang of longing, not for the past, but for connection, the simple pleasure of being part of a living, breathing world. Eleanor nudged my arm gently. "You deserve this, Renati," she said softly. "All of this beauty, all of this life." I began inviting friends over, slowly transforming my apartment into a hub of warmth and laughter. Tea parties, book readings, quiet evenings with soft music. These moments reminded me of the joy of companionship without strings attached, without hidden agendas. The women from the support group became more than friends. They were family, witnesses to my transformation, celebrating victories both big and small. One afternoon, as I organized old photographs, I stumbled upon a letter from my younger self. I had written it after a particularly lonely birthday, confiding in my future self about dreams, hopes, and fears. I unfolded it carefully, feeling a lump in my throat as I read, "I hope one day I'll find strength, love, and freedom." Tears rolled down my cheeks, but this time they were tears of gratitude. I realized that the woman I had longed to become was finally here, standing in a sunlit apartment, surrounded by friends, and breathing freely. Life also brought unexpected joys. One day, while attending a local community event, I met Mrs. Alvarez, an elderly woman with a mischievous sparkle in her eyes. We bonded instantly over stories of resilience, laughter, and the shared understanding of how life could test you in unimaginable ways. Soon, we were planning weekly meetups, cooking together, taking long walks, and sharing books. Her companionship was a reminder that friendship could arrive when least expected, bringing light to corners of the heart I had forgotten existed. The city itself became my playground. I wandered through art galleries, discovered quaint cafes tucked into quiet streets, and joined volunteer initiatives that allowed me to mentor women who faced situations similar to mine. Every day offered an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to live deliberately. The sense of freedom was intoxicating, not just freedom from David and Marissa, but freedom from the invisible chains of fear, guilt, and self-doubt. One quiet evening, I received a call from an old friend, Clara, whom I hadn't spoken to in years. We reminisced about childhood memories, about laughter shared, and lessons learned. Our conversation ended with an invitation to visit her countryside home. Driving there the next weekend, the wind whipping through the open windows, I felt exhilarated, alive in a way I hadn't felt since before the betrayals, before the court case, before the weight of others' expectations had pressed so heavily on my shoulders. During that visit, I found solace in the quiet fields, the soft rustling of leaves and the gentle warmth of the sun. I spent hours sitting under a great oak tree, journaling my thoughts, dreams, and reflections. It was in these moments that I realized life wasn't about what I had lost, but about what I still had and what I was capable of creating. The woman who had once been afraid to speak her mind, to set boundaries, to claim her happiness, was now fully present, strong, resilient, whole. Love, in its simplest form, also found its way back into my life. Not the romanticized version, but the steady, comforting presence of genuine human connection. I began dating slowly, carefully, with a clarity I had never possessed before. I no longer sought validation or security. Instead, I embraced companionship with a heart wide open but discerning, cherishing laughter, mutual respect, and shared joy. Evenings became a sanctuary of reflection. I would sit on my balcony, gazing at the city lights, savoring the quiet moments of peace. The distant noise of traffic, the soft hum of life beyond my walls, and the knowledge that I had reclaimed my own destiny created a profound sense of contentment. I whispered to myself, "This is freedom. This is life." The betrayal I had endured, the pain of financial manipulation and broken trust, had not disappeared entirely, but I had transformed it into wisdom, into the ability to recognize genuine love and loyalty, and into the courage to protect my boundaries. Every scar became a testament to resilience, a symbol of a life reclaimed and cherished. As I prepared for bed each night, I would reflect on the journey I had undertaken, the tears, the fights, the victories, the healing, and I felt gratitude, not only for the lessons learned, but for the strength that had carried me through the darkest hours. I realized that life was not merely about survival. It was about flourishing, embracing opportunities, and allowing oneself to truly live. Looking back now, I understand that the hardest battles often lead to the most profound joys. The house, the car, the betrayals, all were catalysts that led me to this moment of clarity and liberation. I had rediscovered the woman I had always been beneath the layers of fear, doubt, and obligation. And in her, I found a deep, abiding sense of peace and purpose. Life, I learned, is unpredictable. But in reclaiming it, we discover our capacity for joy, our resilience, and the limitless potential of our own hearts. I had learned to embrace the unexpected, to treasure friendships, to cultivate freedom, and to love myself without apology. And as the city lights flickered below my balcony, I whispered once more, "I am free. I am enough. I am home." The morning air felt different that day, lighter, sweeter, filled with promise. As I sipped my coffee on the balcony, I watched the city wake, feeling a deep sense of gratitude that made my chest ache in the best way. The battles of the past months, the betrayals, the lies, the endless courtroom tension were finally behind me. I was free, not only from the manipulation and greed of my family, but from the weight of self-doubt I had carried for decades. I smiled as I traced the delicate pattern of the coffee cup with my finger. Thinking about how life had brought me here, it had not been easy. The sting of deceit from those I loved most had cut deeper than I ever imagined, leaving scars that would take time to fade. Yet, I had transformed that pain into resilience, my tears into courage, and my fear into empowerment. Each scar, each memory, was a testament to the strength I had discovered within myself. That afternoon, Eleanor and I walked to a nearby park, our steps echoing through the cobblestone streets. Birds chirped, and the scent of blooming flowers mingled with the distant aroma of fresh bread from a bakery down the street. "Renati," Eleanor said, her voice gentle yet firm, "you've come so far. How do you feel?" I took a deep breath, letting the crisp air fill my lungs. "Alive," I replied. "I feel alive for the first time in years. I feel me again." She smiled, and in her eyes I saw pride, love, and the unwavering belief in my capacity to rebuild my life. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into new experiences. I enrolled in a creative writing course, something I had always dreamed of but had postponed for decades. Sitting in a sunlit classroom, surrounded by people sharing their stories, I realized that I had so many tales to tell, stories of heartbreak, betrayal, courage, and triumph. I began writing again, pouring my soul onto paper, reliving the journey that had shaped me, and in doing so, finding healing and closure. Friendship became a central part of my life. I reconnected with old acquaintances, made new friends, and nurtured relationships built on mutual respect and honesty. No longer did I feel the crushing pressure of pleasing others at my own expense. I was learning to recognize genuine kindness, to cherish it, and to cultivate it in return. Every conversation, every shared laugh, was a reminder that life could still be tender and beautiful. One evening, as I returned from a local art exhibition, I found a small package waiting on my doorstep. Inside was a note from Eleanor. For the woman who taught me the true meaning of resilience. Keep shining. And nestled within the note was a delicate bracelet, a symbol of strength, and the bond we had forged through shared experiences. Tears filled my eyes, but this time they were of gratitude and joy, not sorrow. I also began volunteering at a community center, mentoring women who had faced betrayal or financial manipulation. Their stories mirrored my own in many ways, and I realized that by sharing my journey, I could offer hope, guidance, and validation. I encouraged them to reclaim their independence, to trust themselves, and to recognize the power they held to shape their own destinies. Their courage inspired me as much as I inspired them, creating a cycle of healing and empowerment that felt sacred. Occasionally, I thought of David and Marissa. I had heard through mutual acquaintances that they were struggling in their own ways, learning the hard lessons of responsibility and honest work. I felt no desire for revenge or confrontation, only a quiet hope that they would discover integrity, empathy, and the value of genuine connection. I realized that forgiveness wasn't about excusing their actions, but freeing myself from the burden of resentment. The apartment itself had become a sanctuary. Every corner held intention and care, books stacked neatly, paintings that I had created, flowers that brightened the space. It was a reflection of me, a home infused with my energy, my tastes, and my hard-won joy. Walking through the rooms, I often paused to breathe deeply, absorbing the sense of safety, independence, and accomplishment that surrounded me. Late one night, I stepped out onto the balcony with a cup of tea. Gazing at the stars scattered across the velvet sky, memories of the past year washed over me, the fear, the heartbreak, the courtroom tension, the sleepless nights filled with worry and uncertainty. Yet for every painful memory, there was a triumph, a lesson, a moment where I had stood my ground and chosen myself over fear. I whispered softly into the night, I am whole. I am strong. I am free. And for the first time in decades, those words didn't feel like a mantra. They felt like truth. The woman who had once lived in the shadow of others' greed and expectations had emerged from the storm, radiant, confident, and unafraid. Friends continued to play an important role in this new chapter. We shared laughter over simple dinners, discussed books and art, and even planned trips together. One weekend, we traveled to the mountains, hiking through lush trails and breathing in the crisp, clean air. I marveled at the beauty of nature and the resilience of life, finding parallels in my own journey, the growth, the renewal, and the courage to keep moving forward. Love, in all its forms, became richer and more meaningful. I learned to appreciate the quiet companionship of friends, the laughter of community, and even the occasional romantic connection, approached with clarity and mindfulness. No longer driven by desperation or need, I embraced relationships with authenticity and grace, valuing trust, respect, and mutual care above all else. As the year unfolded, I began to feel a profound sense of peace. The battles I had faced had not been easy, but they had prepared me for this life, a life where I could dream without fear, laugh without restraint, and love without compromise. I had learned that true empowerment wasn't about the absence of adversity, but about the courage to face it with integrity and self-respect. On quiet evenings, I would often write in my journal, reflecting on the transformation that had taken place. I am the author of my own story now, I would write. I choose the chapters, I set the tone, and I cherish the moments. I am no longer bound by the past, only inspired by it. Those pages became a testament to resilience, a celebration of independence, and a guide for the next chapter of my life. And so, I stand at the threshold of my new life, ready to embrace all the experiences it has to offer. I have discovered that happiness is not found in material possessions, nor in the approval of others, but in the courage to live authentically, to nurture meaningful relationships, and to honor the self that has endured, survived, and thrived. Looking back, I realized that the sale of my house and car, the betrayals, and the challenges were not the end. They were catalysts for growth, awakening, and liberation. I had been forced to confront the fragility of trust, the depth of human selfishness, and the limits of conditional love. But in doing so, I had discovered an inner strength that could never be taken from me. Now, as I sip my tea and watch the city glow beneath the night sky, I know that this is just the beginning. I am free, empowered, and ready to embrace the future with open arms and an open heart. I have learned the ultimate lesson. The most precious love we can give and receive is the love for ourselves.